consistency of execution is what leads to success. Simple things here. You have success by being disciplined and doing the same process over and over again, whether it's a franchise or any other business, right? That's all the same. And so if somebody's just not present, their team is not going to have consistent execution at the level that I think is required to really grow the business.
Cool. All right, guys, I got Brian Beers here, owner of a bunch of Midas franchises. He's going to tell us a little bit about his experience buying, growing, building franchises. So Brian, do you want to just start by giving us a little overview of yourself and your background and what you're up to?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so I'm turned 35 in about 11 days from now. And
young guy, okay.
It was a family business. My dad started in 1976 when he was 22 years old. The Midas business has been in our family's blood for many, many years. And so anyway, my dad started it with his dad, and his brother-in-law joined. They grew it over the years through buying the franchises, starting them, provided a great life for myself, our family. And I go to college. I interest in entrepreneurship and business and actually software and music and guitar behind me and everything. And but after college, it was 2010, I decided, hey, I wanted to join the family business. And 08, 09 had been rough on them. Weren't making any money. Same business for 30 something years and tired. And so I joined and just start to learn it and breathe new life. We'll talk about it, but then we started growing and having success. And my brother and I became then partners. And today we own 30 locations throughout Philly, New Jersey, and kind of the suburbs in those areas.
Can you give us any insight on why you think your dad and your grandfather picked Midas over other brands, and or was it kind of
so back then it was pretty unique from what I hear. It was like exhaust systems. It was before stainless steel, and they rusted out every 3 years. So as often as you get maybe brakes or tires today, back then you'd change out your exhaust system. And Midas was the first to market with these lifetime guarantee on a muffler, and so the muffler, you'd have to replace it every year. So it was kind of this benefit where you kind of got this free muffler. You just had to pay labor. And that's what really built the whole business. And so back in the day, I mean, my dad says it was just a cash machine because you had all these repeat customers. Your cost of goods was very low because they could buy all their parts, tractor trailer loads from Midas, like they distributed their own parts. It was vertically integrated. And labor was extremely cheap. Like any person who could use a torch and a hammer could be trained to do the process. So back then it was a very simple business. They did very well, growing it. And they were one of the best in the brand once they kind of got into it. I mean, through recognition, through sales growth, through everything.
So how's the business changed? So that business, it sounds like mostly went away. How did it transition over the last 20, 30 years?
Today, it's completely, it's unrecognizable from back then, where business is exhaust is 5 to 10%. And it's primarily replacing catalytic converters. Pipes don't rust out like they used to.
When they get stolen in San Francisco and Philadelphia. Oh
yeah, all over. Dude, yeah. We're making a ton of money replacing those and we can sometimes save the customer's money by fabricating something rather than having to wait for a OEM quality one that the car is totally fine with. So but anyway, so that's a small percentage, but we do brakes and tires and steering suspension and check engine lights and oil changes. And I mean, it's a total maintenance thing. The profile of the technicians now are highly intelligent, trained, skilled mechanics who have $20,000-$30,000 worth of tools, their tools in the box, and they invest in them and invest in training. And technology and the evolution of cars is continuing to make it more and more complicated, meaning techs need more training and more pay. And there's a huge labor shortage in all trades, right? It's not just mechanics, it's plumbers, it's electricians, it's everything.
Let's talk about that, because we see that at all of our businesses, of course. And car maintenance is a trade skill. You have to be very well trained to do it. So how do you guys attract the trade folks that you need? How do you retain them? I'm sure that's been a challenge as you grow.
It's been a challenge for decades now, and it's not getting any better. It's a multi-pronged approach. One is we try to have good compensation plans, where a lot of shops are flat rate. Well, they'll pay a per billable hour. Right. And so but it can vary tremendously. If they don't charge a certain amount, like if it should take 2 hours and only bill 1 hour, they're getting paid half the time. Then if there's no work, they could potentially be making no money. So there's these ups and downs. We have more of a structure that's a higher base, a higher guarantee, but then there's a performance aspect. So for the guys who do perform, they can make a lot of money. I mean, our best guys make over $100,000 a year. And so So we try to pay well, like number one, but that in turn also means like we need to have a good value proposition to be able to charge customers the right amount of money so the margins work and the business can survive. So we have to pay well, then we have to deliver excellent customer experience, and through communication, through a clean environment, through payment options to help make it affordable, right? There's like all these other approaches, but a lot of the reasons we have to focus on that is because we need to be able to pay our techs really well. And then from a culture standpoint, bigger on culture, which we could talk about a little, but we're a family-owned company, and my brother and we try to make it like the best of both worlds, where we have the benefits of a large company. We've got really good health insurance. We got 401k. We've got like paid time off. We've got, all this good stuff, the name brand, but we're still like locally owned and operator. And if people have an issue, like we're willing to work with people and help them as much as we can, versus sometimes when you get to the bigger, larger corporate companies, you're like, Firestones and Monroe's or whatever becomes a corporate hierarchy. And I think it loses some of that personal touch. And what we're seeing is the guys are moving out of those big box brands, and then they're looking for the independent shops. And a lot of times they don't think of Midas as independent because most people think it's a big corporation. But once we can talk to them, explain what we can offer, and what it's like, then we can attract those guys too.
So if I'm a high school kid and I want to be a mechanic, or I'm thinking about being a mechanic, what's my path, right? Like how long am I getting paid, $20 an hour? When am I starting to make, 60, 70K a year? And when can I really break through to that six-figure?
Yeah. So a lot of it's like skill set of the person. I mean, we've had younger guys like in their 20s and 60 or 70 grand. It's because they're really sharp, right? And they can, and they're hardworking. They're not on their phones like dicking around. They're like waiting for the next car to come in and like helping somebody else and like working with the senior tech to figure out how much they can learn. And there is a progression, right, of anybody who starts. They go to a tech school or a vocational school for a couple of years, and they get a job, and they're in a good atmosphere where it's a teamwork and everybody wants to learn, and they're a hard worker. Like, at least in our organization, that person can grow and thrive, and tool programs will help them. We'll buy the tools basically up front and like do payroll deductions for them to help spread out payments and things like that you can do to help develop people.
So if I go to a 2-year tech school, like how easy is it to get a job afterwards, and how much would I get paid? Most likely when I start.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We're probably guaranteeing somebody, that $18 an hour, $20 an hour. It really depends. Like different states, there's different certifications and kind of what we feel their skill set is. I mean, they're making at least 15, like is kind of the minimum. But then we have like performance plans too. So if a guy produces, like he could easily get it up to double whatever that number is.
And is it hard to get a job, or is the desire for labor just so high you'll get hired immediately?
They can job anywhere,
Okay,
pretty much.
I love to hear that.
Yeah. But then there's like the revolving, like the guys kind of work this cycle but then at a certain point.
So you started in your business right around the GFC, like 2008. What was the business like then? I know you said it wasn't making a lot of money. Why wasn't it making a lot of money? How many individual shops did you guys have at that point?
So we had,
and what's changed in the last like 12 years or so?
Yeah. So we had 6 locations. I think we were probably doing 5 million-ish in sales. But like I remember being at some manager meetings like in the beginning and my dad showing like some P&Ls, and it was like zero profit, or like my dad putting in money to make payroll and talking about the changes we need to make, and we need to focus on gross profit. We need to drive more volume in the stores, and that's what kind of then started it. And so then I get in there and we just start just trying to have people focus on profit, have people focus on the process. And then just try to hire people who, want to win. They want to be team players. They're like driven, and just trying to shift the culture a little bit from people I think were a little bit too complacent to people who wanted to win. And so we started having success. And then 2016, we did our first acquisition of 2 stores. So it took me about 6 years of in the business and learning it and just trying to learn from others and masterminding. And I was part of all these different groups with other franchisees. And this is like a thing we could talk about, but the benefits of a franchise is like this built-in community to learn best practices, to have sales increases, to give us the confidence that, hey, like now we want to grow this thing. Like we don't want to sell it.
I think there's a lot of business owners out there that are making good revenue, $5 million. They're not getting the profit they want. Maybe they're losing money. Maybe they're putting more money into the business. Like I've certainly been there with one of my businesses where I needed to, take money out of my own bank account to make payroll. How do you my default is, hey, you kind of need money to make money, right? You need to go out, you need to hire a couple of really great people that maybe you need to pay more. How do you make that transition from we're running really lean and it's really tight here, maybe we don't have the right people, and we need to make the jump to being a real profitable business?
Real focus on the numbers. And for me, I mean, it's like P&L reviews. And at the time, I mean, I believe like my dad would, like, we had an outsourced accountant. So they'd send like all their stuff to the accountant. And like 3 months later, they'd get a P&L, which is like, and it's already now summer. And like, and that P&L is from the winter, which is like not as good for us.
We hired a controller and they would do daily cash flow analysis, and they own 15 different companies because it was so important for them to know cash in and cash out.
So that was a big part, was like breaking down the P&Ls, working with other groups to figure out, like, there's like two things you can control in this business. It's like, what's our cost of goods? Like what's our gross margin? And then what's our payroll cost? And then those two things is where then we focus to say, all right, like our goal is 75%, let's say, gross profit. And if we're at 70%, we're leaving like 5 points on the board. And at the time, if we're doing $5 million, that's $250,000 of profit that is off the table. And if payroll should be 26% and we're running at 30%, there's 4 points. So now we're like a 9-point swing. So instead of making 12% or whatever, we're making 3%, which is like razor thin when you've got fluctuations of business. And so I think a lot of it is just like figuring out what are the things you can control in your business and being hyper focused on those things to figure out, what do we got to do? Like, is it a pricing issue? Is it a sales process issue? Is it comp plan? Is it the wrong people? Is it like, right? You got to like figure it out. And because you can't control your rent, you can't control your health insurance, you can't control utilities. There's all these things you can't do, but like you focus on the things you can. And then it's just like, once you can figure that out, then you just drive volume. And then the real profit growth comes from, for us, if we can move from like $100,000 a month per location to, 125 to 150, like exponentially, now we're making more money, like significantly more money.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
that's the key.
Okay. I think that's going to be helpful for owners. Tell me a little bit about these masterminds. So who organizes them? Are you in there with well, I guess tell us what a mastermind is first. And then are you in there with other Midas owners or just other franchise owners? What's the structure?
So years ago, nobody called it a mastermind, but it was just, within Midas, it was like a performance group. So it was 15 to 20 franchisees who independently got together once a quarter and met. I think we met in Dallas most of the time. And we met at a vendor's place, and then we had vendors take us out to eat. So, it didn't cost anything but travel in the hotel. And we'd spend 2 or 3 days talking about one thing in our business that we were doing very well in that we could share with others. And then one challenge that we had that we wanted help with the room from. I was in this group for a number of years, totally unofficial, like not like this isn't a corporate coordinated thing. This is like just a bunch of franchisees getting together and having these conversations. And that's how I was able to help on some of the technology things, because I was young, 25 years old then probably. But then I was learning from these other guys in terms of, how do you turn around a bad store? How do you know when to expand? Like, what should your margins be? And all this stuff. And then now it's shifted to, now we don't do that as much in the Midas world, but I'm part of other masterminds. The main one is called GoBundance, which is for entrepreneurs, real estate investors, like anybody who really owns a business or, is kind of higher net worth, to talk about similar things, which is like, how do you run a better business? Whatever. How do you run a more complete life? Like, how do you have work-life balance? How do you do goal setting, working with coaches, like whatever it is. But the power of the mastermind really is, it's a group of people who are like putting their brains together, their minds together to create something out of nothing, and to help each other and to support and to have referrals and like, and all this stuff. I mean, Napoleon Hill talks about masterminds in his Think and Grow Rich book, which is from like whatever the 1600s, the 1800s. And so this isn't new. It's just like, I think now with the internet, it's so much easier to get in one remotely and then meet up once a year than years ago. It would have been a lot harder, I think.
Yep. Have you heard of Benjamin Franklin's Juntos?
No.
So Benjamin Franklin used to host a mastermind basically, and he would call it Juntos. He would invite entrepreneurs and local politicians once a month. They would get together and kind of have a meeting of the minds and share what they learned, share obstacles they were seeing in society in their own businesses. So my friend Sean and I, maybe 10 years ago, we started a mastermind in San Francisco, just for fellow entrepreneurs, fellow tech guys. And, as you said, it was an incredible experience because all of these people are sharing their intimate stories. They're telling us things they don't normally tell kind of employees employees or investors,
Yeah.
things that can be really challenging. And it created these amazing friendships, like friendships that I have to this day. I met my current business partner there. A lot of our friends and investors came from that. So
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in the mastermind concept.
So yeah, for anybody out there looking, I mean, I think it's just, you just got to find your tribe or whatever it is, your group of people. And yeah, I was just at one this week, and Echo Abundance came to Philly and ran one, and we had 55 people. It was awesome. Like I have a ton of notes, ton of connections, and a lot of times it's just like getting to know people. And like you said, people are standing up, telling personal stories that like, then you connect with them on another level, or somebody else in the room is going through the same thing and they can help, whether it's an issue with their kid or their wife or their like business partner or whoever. And a lot of times it's the personal stuff that then affects the business performance. So you got to solve all that stuff to get your head clear and be able to execute. So yeah, I would highly recommend anybody looking to try to find one.
Yeah. So let's go back to the Midas shop for a bit. Do you think anyone can step in and buy a Midas franchise or start a Midas franchise and be successful? And if so, what are the costs? How do people get started? And if you feel like it's not for a certain group of people, tell me a little bit about like what qualities you think make for a successful Midas owner.
So 40% of the system is single store operators, right? So there's about 1,000 stores, and about 400 of them or so owner operators, single store operators, and they vary. So for some people, it's like they buy themselves a job. So they're like a mechanic or they're like a store manager, and then they want more. And either maybe they buy one from the franchisee who had it, he just sells it to the manager, maybe finances itself, or they open up a new one, but they kind of buy themselves a job. And then there's this other group like myself who've got 10 locations, 15, 30. I mean, there's a couple groups that have 100. And so we've taken the same exact business model, but built this whole business around it. Can kind of be whatever you want. But to be successful, you have to be in the business. You have to work in the business, on the business, but it's not a passive investment by any means. It's like if someone's saying, hey, I want a thing that's a passive investor and I'll just like hire a GM and he's going to run the place and it'll be fine, recommend not doing that. It's a dynamic. I don't know. All those guys, like I've bought stores from those people. Like that's who I buy their stores. So
what are the main things you see when, the owner's not running the business? What are the main issues that come up?
We're in the people business, right? We just happen to fix cars. And so the ability to hire good people, but then train them on the processes that need to be done. And so if you're not present and you just hire a new guy because he's got a bunch of automotive experience and you throw him in the store, like he's just going to do whatever he did at his last job, which might have not been the most successful thing if he's looking for a job, right? Our job to then instow the process, like this is how we check somebody in. This is how we check somebody out. This is like how we want to present the work. This is like why we want to do the follow-up. We want the store to be clean and welcoming and be friendly on the phones and like simple things here. But like you have success by being disciplined and doing the same process over and over again. It's all the same. It's consistency of execution is what leads to success. And so if somebody's just not present, their team is not going to have consistent execution at the level that I think is required to really grow the business. And so
I like that. Success is consistency and execution. That's so true. It's a great takeaway.
And so even with our stores that vary, we have stores at $2 million. I have stores that do 700,000. And like the difference, like the same major retail area, they've got like the same marketing, the same pricing. Like the difference is the leader and the consistent execution every day, every phone call, like no matter what, they're very consistent versus the guys who struggle are inconsistent. And so that's what we're really working on training and stowing and inspiring.
And what is a top quartile performing? Maybe not like the top 10%, but if you're in the top 25%, how much cash flow is one shop throwing off?
So start at the top. The top store in the country does about 5 million a year.
In revenue or cash flow?
In revenue.
Okay. And how many mechanics is that, you think?
He's probably got about 15, maybe. It's an 8-bay shop. I mean, I have 8-bay shop.
What did you say? What kind of shop?
It's eight. A lot of it's the size. So it's 8 bays, like whatever. The new like gold standard is the 2 million or more a year of sales. Then the next kind of bracket is that kind of like the 1.5 to 2. And then 1 million used to be good, but now that's kind of seen as average. And then anything below 1 million is probably losing money.
So let's say you're doing 1.5 million. How much cash flow is that?
So you're probably making,
after paying the GM.
Yeah, let's say 13%. So maybe 200 grand.
200 grand.
A store doing 2 million a year is probably making, well, depends on a couple factors, but is probably making 350, maybe 400 if their rent's a good number.
It looks like it's not super expensive to get into the Midas business. Like I'm seeing a franchise fee of 30K. I assume then you need to buy equipment. Can you walk us through?
Yeah, so like there's
startup costs.
There's like a couple different ways you can do it, right? So you can buy existing. So for me, 28 of of our 30 stores have been existing stores that existing Midas franchises that we've acquired, right? So that's 2 of them. One of them was a Pep Boys that went out of, that closed, and I just like scooped up the location and bought the equipment from them. The other was a former Midas shop that had closed that we had reopened. But every other one, it was an existing business. And so if you're going to buy an existing business, the cost is whatever it costs to buy the business. So I've paid as much as I think $500,000 a location. These are all owner finance too, which we could talk about. And I've paid for locations that are like making money and doing really well and are turnkey. I've paid as little as $120,000 for a location. That Pep Boys cost me 35 grand because all I just to do is buy the assets. I said Pep Boys would have to remove everything. I said, I'd give you 35 grand and they give us the keys and we get a new lease with the landlord and we're good to go. So that's like buying an existing in a lot of cases is the easiest route because there's already equipment, there's compressors and airlines and just all the crap. Now, a lot of it might not be in good shape. And like some of these stores that we buy for 120 grand, we're putting $100,000 into it over the next year because all the lifts need to replace and the compressor dies and the tire machine shit and all this stuff. But all that 100 grand is hopefully coming out of the cash flow of the business that you just bought and not out of your pocket. So
tell me a little bit about the seller financing that you're talking about. So, from our business purchases, sometimes the owners will hold a note called a seller note, which basically means they play the bank. What's happening in your situation and why are owners choosing to do that?
Yeah. So I would say 24 of our 30, I've got owner finance. The other ones we paid cash, or my first acquisition was a bank loan because I didn't know about financing at the time. And so, yeah, like you said, we just pitch it to the seller saying, you're going to be the bank. We're going to make a down payment and we're going to make monthly payments inclusive of principal and interest for the next X amount of years. And I mean, I'm in the position now where we're the primary buyer, right? A lot of cases, the only one talking to them. And so I just tell them, listen, this is like, we want to buy your business and this is how we're going to do it. I don't give them an option that is anything but that. And so, but we also have the reputation to back that up, right? Because you need trust. They have to trust you to get owner financing. If it's some random independent shop and I want to buy it for $300,000 or whatever, and I want him to finance 250,000 of it, and he doesn't know me, like he's going to be like, no, go to a bank. I'm not going to do it.
Because you could tank his business and then he wouldn't get his seller note, right?
And he gets the assets of the crappy business I just ran into the ground. Like,
yeah.
So that's like independent. But what happens within a franchise network is a couple things. It's a closed system. Like you got to pay the 35 grand per location or whatever it is to get in. It's like a country club. Everybody knows each other or knows of each other. And so like all that helps create that trust. And so most people know me, right? And I also am intentional about creating a personal brand. I'm active on LinkedIn. Obviously, I've got my own podcast. I will host Zoom calls with Midas franchisees like that Mastermind during COVID. Like I would host an hour-long Zoom call interviewing a successful franchisee or talking about best practices with 75 other franchises on it. And so like intentionally, I've positioned myself as a trustworthy, knowledgeable, friendly guy. And that helps when they want to sell, they know we're good for it. And the other part of it is like in a lot of franchises, they report and rank performance within the franchise. Every week or month or whatever, they're sending out sales rankings. And so other people can see 2 things. One, you can see who the good performers are, so you can get advice from them. You can see the bad performers who are maybe the people you would want to talk about buying. But then other people, maybe they're interested, me buying the location, they can see how my stores perform. And if they've been following me for a year, they'll see that we're buying more locations and all those locations are doing better because you have to be a performer. If they think you're a good performer and you're going to like take over their business and not only like you're going to make it better because that's what you do, all that leads to the confidence side of it. So I think if someone's like in a franchise or wants to grow within a franchise, like you get in however you can, right? You're probably gonna have to pay cash or get an SBA loan or whatever. And then you just work on creating relationships with potential acquisition targets, and you work on creating a personal brand, which means like the trust and the people know you. And then from there, just have conversations, and honestly, it's become easy.
Yeah. If I were looking to start a franchise, one of the main concerns I would have is about choosing the right location. What kind of advice could you give someone like me that's either looking to buy or start something, and I want to make sure that I'm well positioned for success?
Yeah. So it really depends on what the specific brand and the concept is. Like for Midas, we're in the retail customer facing business, right? So for us, like we need a location on a major road, like by a fast food. Like most of my locations are by a Taco Bell or KFC or Burger King. So if someone comes to me like a realtor and it's like in an industrial complex or like in a neighborhood and there's no like not a major retail road, it's an automatic no for me. I mean, I'm in locations that have not good egress. Like it's a one-way road, right? And you only can get it from one direction. And like, so maybe the location's good, but the egress isn't. And some of those locations do just fine. Like the highest volume stores in the country are like that. And so sometimes nitpicky on it. So we looked years ago into Little Caesars, and Little Caesars has like an expansion.
The pizza place.
The pizza place. Yeah. The
Okay.
instant. And their whole thing is hot and ready. So you can just walk in. They've got all this pizza already, you know, on your way home. You don't have to like wait 30 minutes. You grab a pizza and you go, right? And it's $5. And so it's like high volume thing. And anyway, so we were looking into it. We went to all these locations that were closed, and in talking to the franchisees, like, why would these places go? It said success was highly determined based on the location. Now for them, because it's the convenience factor, it's like people are on their way home. What am I going to cook for dinner? And they can swing in, they see it, they swing in, they can swing out. It's easy to park. It's easy to walk in. It's easy to get out, like all that stuff. And so if they picked the wrong location, they could spend $350,000 building out the location. It could fail. Even if it was an excellent operator, they picked the wrong location. To me, that was like too scary for me, right? Because like I want my success to be determined based on operations and my ability to operate, not like, did the shopping spot have enough? Was there enough parking there, or whatever it is? In Midas, it's kind of like that. We can, as long as it's a major retail road, success is determined based on the people and the process. A lot of it's the franchise you pick, the model, really getting to know through talking to existing franchisees and former franchisees, what are the factors that make it successful and what of them aren't, and asking that question, does location matter? Like, and for me, my answer would be, if it meets, you know, the major criteria, then it doesn't really matter. And the pizza place, it would be like, it is the number one thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So that sounds like a really good question to ask other owners. I guess while we're on the topic, are there other franchise concepts that you've been super excited about, where maybe the grass is greener over there, those guys have a better pasture?
Yeah, so I try not to, you know, I have a shiny object syndrome problem, like you probably do, owning a whole bunch of companies. The thing about like picking it is like, it's different for everybody, right? It really depends on like the business model that fits your needs. Like, are you going all in on this thing, like, and you're quitting your W-2, or like this is going to be your job? Or you sell, like, am I selling Midas and it's my new thing? Is it a side hustle where I'm just like doing it at nights, or is it passive income, or is it an expansion or bolt on to my existing business? There's so many factors that vary. So like, I'd be happy to tell you a few things I like, but like for somebody else in a different position, that might be a terrible idea for them. A lot of it is this self-discovery and really trying to think through, what are the business model I like? So this is how I think about it. I go through a business model, which is like, is it retail, or is it like, there's tons of these mobile franchises, right? Like,
What's
there's
mobile franchise?
like there's mobile truck washing. You can get to like, you don't have like a retail location. You're going to somebody's home to do home maintenance, or to do like rotor rooter, or there's water mold restoration stuff. Or I heard about it one the other day. It was called like mobility something. They fixed senior citizen equipment, to like beds and wheelchairs and like anything people use for mobility. They had a mobile site, so their team would come onto your site and fix a house and fix whatever they need to. And there's that whole model, which is going to be like a lower overhead, because you don't have the physical location. You can have a bigger radius, right? Because you're driving to them, versus in a retail location, like people don't come more than like a mile to get the cars fixed. And so if we want to expand, we need to plot out, more locations, and overhead continues to rise. Partly like thinking, what's the business model do you want, is a big part of it. And then I really look at like, revenue structures. Do you want like a recurring revenue model, which is more of a subscription? Do you want like a project base, like you're selling like solar panels or roofing, right? Or is it more of like on demand, like we're kind of this on demand, which is more of like, I don't know, haircuts or auto repair? So I think it's kind of going through this questionnaire to think about what fits your lifestyle, the kind of revenue, and then what kind of employees do you want to work with? Do you want to work like the low skilled high school part-time kids, and like you really want to like, you're okay with turnover and you really are good in training development? For us, we're dealing with like high skilled, highly paid people, but blue collar. Then there's a whole like white collar sales.
One observation is that in the low skilled jobs, like you said, there's more turnover. Oftentimes the reason for that turnover is just because low skilled jobs command less wages, right? Whereas like the high skilled jobs, that's a life job, right? It's something that you can do forever. You can build real wealth. You can provide for your family. So it's definitely something that we use as a lens as well when we're looking at our businesses. Give me a couple names. What are franchises that you're excited about, and why?
I'm in the water mold fire restoration. Like I have a friend in PuroClean, and there's a ton of them. There's like Paul Davis, PuroClean, 911, Serve Pro, Serve Master. He's in PuroClean and really into it. It's an interesting business model. It's insurance driven, territory based. You can buy out existing territories and just kind of continue to expand your web. The margins can be pretty good as you build it. The problem, it's an AR business though. So like you got to have a good amount of capital to be able to float all your payroll expenses and have to wait 90 days to get paid by the insurance companies.
Yeah, just to clarify that. So that's another thing that I look at quite a bit, is like, when do you get paid? Do you get paid before you do the service? Do you get paid the day after you do the service? Maybe in like a plumbing business.
Yep.
Or when you're waiting to collect insurance, like you just said, you have to pay for 90 days, right? Employee costs, upfront costs, building costs, and you're not getting your money until 90 days, hopefully, as long as you don't have to negotiate, and that could take a little bit longer from insurance companies. So that's always something that gives me a lot of concern. Any other companies that you're particularly excited about?
There's an interesting one I follow on doggy, like anything with pet related, because people spend a ton of money on pets. So there's all this, like, I think it's Petopia, but they're like a doggy daycare model that's like higher tech. So like cameras, so in real time, you can like watch your dog at daycare. And like the one I take my dog doesn't do that. They like occasionally post Facebook pictures, and we're like scrolling through to try to find their dog, and like you're all excited if it's like in the corner, but their whole thing is like live streaming, and like, I don't know, it's a higher tech twist on a classic service, and it's recurring. A lot of them are recurring revenue. People who go, they buy packages, like, and you do wash and nail clips, and then you do whatever boarding, and there's like, you can do training.
Love that one. That's one that I definitely want to look into. That's a business.
So anyway, that one's interesting. That if I had to find one, I'd look at that.
What about mentors? Is there anyone in your industry or outside industry that you've looked up to, that you've learned a lot from? And tell us a little bit about your relationship and how you met, because I'm a big believer in mentors.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's different. I don't know if anybody is specifically in the franchising world. And because part of it, to be honest, like, I mean, we kind of like put franchising in its own box, but at the end of the day, like, we're just running a business like any other business. We just happen to like have to follow a few more rules than somebody else. And so there's a couple ones. Like I hired a business coach 2 years ago. It was like a huge investment at the time, but really helped. I mean, at the time we had 12 locations at the time too. And so part of the things that he helped me with was to figure out what's holding me back from growing. And you get somebody you can talk through some of these concepts. And then that's what led to, for now we have 30. And a lot of it, I give credit to him, and just challenging me on what my limiting beliefs were. Why not me? Convinced me to launch the podcast. I did in April, like a couple months after starting with him, which is expanded now into working on the Twitter following, and just like working on teaching people about the wealth you can build through franchising. So Trevor McGregor is the guy. I give him a lot of credit, and I'm still with him today. And so I think that's important, whether it's a coach or somebody in your corner who can objectively like challenge you on things. Because a lot of times you get to a certain level and like everyone's like a cheerleader to you. But even at whatever level you're on, you could always do better. And there's always things that are holding you back from growing, and not just everybody blowing smoke up here, but actually like challenge you. And I've had guys on Twitter, like in the DMs, challenge me on like, well, what would it take for you to get 300 stores? I would like make up some excuses. They'd like challenge me back. I like actually like that, because like they're making me think bigger, trying to figure out what are the limiting beliefs. And I think anybody in your life who can honestly, and not like be a dick about it, but help you with it, I think is a great person to have.
Yeah. I'm a big believer in coaches. I'm glad you brought that up. I think in the sport world, when we grow up, obviously everybody has a coach, right? But in business, it's almost like it's not taboo, but it's not like everybody does it. It's not automatic. And I don't know why, right? Because like at the end of the day, you're spending 40, 60 hours a week doing this thing. You want to be the best version you can. I've worked with a coach also for a couple of years, and it's been really incredible for me, for sure.
Yeah, well, I think the problem is there's a lot of people out there who are self-proclaimed coaches, and they really don't have like the experience or the track record. They haven't built a business. They haven't. And then I think that's part of the reason it gets a bad rap, where people joke it's like a 21-year-old kid. Now he's like a coach to tell you what to do. And so I think that's part of it.
So yeah, so look for someone that you look up to, that you're excited about, before you hire them as a coach. Go on a few dates, meet a few different coaches.
And it's like an investment. You can't view it as a cost. You view it as a cost and expense, and like, what's the hourly rate or whatever. It's like a terrible approach. That's what because I asked someone when I had our first call, what's the cost? And he told me like, if you view this as a cost, like I'm probably not the right fit. Yeah. He's like, this is an investment where you're going to invest in yourself. You're putting skin in the game, and I'm just the guy who's holding you accountable. So anyway, I think that's like interesting. You view it as an investment in yourself, which is like, should be the best possible investment you can make.
How are you balancing running 30 different shops, which I'm sure takes you a lot of time?
Part of it is like, I intentionally wanted to grow in order to be able to afford to hire people below me to help kind of with all that day-to-day stuff. Because in the beginning, I just joined the business. I mean, I was working 6 days a week, and my phone, I think I literally counted 100 calls in a day, inbound or outbound. I was just like grinding and grinding and grinding. And that was, her concern, and to mine as we wanted to start a family, which is like, how is this sustainable if you're like never here and you're always working? And so my point had always been, well, I have to grow the business to replace myself. That is the only way that I can like get out of this, and that we can continue to make the money you want to make. And so we continue to grow, and then hire. We have 5. So we have about 200 employees. We have about 30 stores. We have about 5 district managers that each oversee 6 stores. And prior to a couple of months ago, all those 5 district guys reported up to my brother and I. But then we hired a COO to kind of take over. All of them now report to him, and then he reports to me. And so he's still kind of learning the business. That's been great. Now hand off the operations side, so then I can focus more on the vision and the culture and just like the bigger projects, which aren't as tied down to a calendar. And so I can be home, and my schedule's more flexible, more the mental work than it is like the physical work.
A bit counterintuitive. You grew your way into more free time. The bigger the business is, kind of the more control you have over what you do and how you spend your time. Well, that's helpful. Brian, this has been great. Thank you for sharing so transparently about your business and everything you've built. Congrats, and excited to see you doing this. I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks for having me.
Next episode of Boring Businesses. I'm your host, Sieva Kozinsky. Thank you for watching or listening today. Any resources we mentioned during the show, we'll make sure to link in the show notes or below the video. If you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify, please leave me a review. It really helps me learn, and it allows other people to discover the podcast as well. Thanks again, and make sure you hit the subscribe or follow button if you haven't already. I'll see you next time.